Welcome, audience. This is Steve Norman. I'm an activist for French speaking and French learning and French usage in Burlington, Vermont. And we have a panel today of folks who are involved in the same issues in one way or another. Our guest of honor visiting us from his vacation place in Willsboro, New York is Fabrice Jaumont, to my right. He's
Hello.
Education Attaché with the French Embassy and author of the newly released book, The Bilingual Revolution. He's an expert on dual language education, especially immersion courses in elementary and other schools, and has an extensive history in Boston and for the last several years in New York City in organizing and implementing bilingual education programs in the public and private schools. And he has a lot to say about this work that's been done over the last 10 years, say, across the country in states including Maine, Massachusetts, Utah, California, Texas. There have been a lot of improvements in language education, including dual language education, starting in elementary school as early as kindergarten or even younger. Also with us today is Cleophace Mukeba, founder of the Vermont Ibutwa Initiative, which has a program in eastern Congo to assist female victims of rape and conflict in the Congo. And he's an educator with the Winooski Public Schools and is interested in dual language education for Congolese and other West African and other immigrants to the U.S. And speaks French himself and has kids who speak French and are interested in continuing their their education in French as well as in English. And also from the City Council of Burlington, the City Council President, Jane Knodell, who is a professor of economics at UVM and did a year of study at the Sorbonne in Paris in her economics studies. She has been on the board of this Channel 17 station, CCTV, and an advisory group in the Wheeler School in the Old North End of Burlington, and provo of UVM for a while. So we would like to get into the subject matter of the day, which is the bilingual revolution, dual language education, especially in Burlington, and a review of the City Council resolution, which 6.5 years ago, the City Council unanimously resolved that Burlington, for a lot of good reasons, including economics and cultural sensitivity and cultural history, should do more to become a dual language city, including such things as public signage and education in the public schools. So Fabrice, please tell us about your research.
Sure.
Give us a few minutes of your history and what's going on most recently.
Sure. So I started this initiative in New York about 10 years ago, and again, we were together with a few parents asking, can we get public schools to create dual language programs so that our kids could sustain their heritage language? And very quickly we got hundreds of families, and this was in the French-speaking community, following us and organizing and demanding from schools to create programs, and starting in a kindergarten and going 1 year after, adding each 1 year each year, and then today, 10 years later, we are now in 10 schools in New York City, going all the way to high schools. Other cities have joined, other language communities want to do this as well. And when I heard that you were trying to do something similar in Burlington, having been a friend of the region, having my family, my American parents live across the lake in Willsboro, New York, and I know exactly what it means when you live an hour from the Canadian border with all the French Quebecers and tourists traveling down the lake and visiting. It makes good sense to think that way with a French dual language program for one of the schools here in Burlington. Makes good sense culturally, makes good sense economically, and I'm sure that that this project will succeed. It has to succeed, really. I've seen this program growing very popular across the nation in many states, even in states that have nothing to do with, let's say, a language specifically. And I'm thinking about Utah in particular, a state that has created programs, dual language programs on an industrial scale, with hundreds and hundreds of programs being created and offered in a number of languages in public schools. Again, this is done for economic reason, because the state of Utah thinks that this is the best thing it can do to invest in its youth, in its multilingual citizenship, its citizens, and then 20 years from now, that the state of Utah does not want to be dead because of not having anyone speaking other language and being able to compete globally. So,
and many of their youth travel for their religious internships,
that's right,
and go all over the world
but
to do that.
It's a smart investment. Like here in Burlington, you're seeing dual language education as a business, economic strategy, which I think is very smart. Other states are doing exactly what you're doing with Delaware, for instance. The governor of Delaware has realized the state was losing businesses, corporations, because employees could not speak languages. Then guess what? The governor decided, well, in that case, we'll create language immersion programs in public schools so that our workforce is now able to compete, and our state will not lose these major corporations. So that's why I'm here to support this initiative. I think it's really important that Burlington, out of all places, being so close to the border and attracting this type of business from the north, should invest more in language education and in French.
And the City Council agreed with that several years ago, and I believe, Jane, that you're hoping to do a review of that initiative that was passed unanimously in 2011. How is that coming?
Yes, so in 2011, the council unanimously adopted a resolution calling for the city of Burlington to be a French-friendly city, if you will. And we noted that the business sector was actually kind of responding in the way we'd like to see, with lots of signage and encouraging Quebecois and other French-speaking visitors to the city. But the city itself had not really done very much. And so we in 2011, this resolution, which had councillors Blais and Dessel and others. So we had two French-American councillors on the city council at that time who kind of, I think, promoted this. And they said, we want the city to also get out in front of this very important work. But what we haven't done is to follow up and say what's actually happened. And so I have I have a staff person who's been doing some research on what has happened. We have a pretty good sense of some departments have been quite active, others not so much so. So it's an opportunity to say, please let's report back. What's been done? Where can we now emphasize on this kind of a second phase? I think that also, since this resolution was adopted, probably there are a lot more citizens or members of our community who are French speaking. And so I think it's even more important, not only for the visitors, but also for many, many of our own residents and citizens here in Burlington.
I think so. The one department that I think has done the most, had the most impact, has been the Parks and Recreation Department, where over the last 3 or 4 years they have made a real effort to affirmatively hire people who can speak French because of all the visitors that come from Quebec. And the last, I'm not sure about this past summer, but the summer before, they had 7 French speakers, and including 4 or 5 Congolese kids and young people who work at the waterfront, the marina, the campground, where when Quebecers in their boats come to Burlington and call up the marina and ask about a mooring or dockage, they can get right on the phone with a French speaker, and they love it. So that's been a real successful initiative. But I think as far as signage goes, we could do more. There's been some recent new signage about the parking structures and follow the arrows to find the parking, but it still doesn't say in French, 2 hours free. And when I see that in big letters, I'll know we're serious, and people take notice, because there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do,
and the city is embarked on a major infrastructure investment program over coming years, and so that's really, so then there's a funding source, right? You know, to kind of integrate the signage, and we just need the awareness and the consciousness to be instilled.
Cleophace, you work in education in the community. What do you see in terms of what's available and what more we could provide, and what difference that would make to kids who are going to school in Burlington and Winooski?
Thank you, Steve. I mean, before even going to your question, Congo is the second country, speaking country in the world. Besides France, we have the Congo. We are talking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo here, because we have two Congos, the Congo-Brazzaville and the Congo-Kinshasa. And I remember when I was taking my classes at St. Michael College, at one point I had great resources in French, and I was asking my professor, can I use these resources? And she said, no, you can't use, because nobody speaks French here. So that is one. And secondly, you know, coming from the DRC, and I went through Zambia, where I taught, you know, I was tutoring students from French school, which is École Champollion. And when I came here, so I wanted to leave that legacy to my children. I want my children to speak French. Of course, I'm teaching in Swahili, but French, it's imperative. I wanted them to learn French, but they can't learn it because I wanted them to start learning it from school, so that I can enforce it at home. So where I'm working, of course, we are having so many refugees from the DRC now, coming from Tanzania, Zambia, some Kenya. And you can see that they are missing that. They want to learn, you know, French. So some of them were born in Tanzania, as I said, Uganda, but they still get part of, you know, the communication from their parent, and they want to have that, the full language. They want to learn that. So I don't think that the school is doing a great job of trying to bring, you know, French as a second language. But I think that by just hirings, you know, because my title is interpreter, translator, and a tutor for French, Swahili, and Lingala. And even for EAO program, I mean, we can even cut like those, like instead of hiring a liaison, we can have a teacher in the classroom who can cover all those languages, and it can be beneficial for us. So as a school, I think we still have some work to do, and I think we can get there together.
What do you see as some of the obstacles to moving in that direction?
So the obstacle, I mean, when you talk to superintendents and the other, you know, school management officers, and what they said, they don't have a source of human capacity, which means teachers. Where are they going to get teachers? And my argument is that it's easy, because when refugees come here, they come with some expertise. They have some skills. Some of us were teachers back home. So as I said, I was tutoring a student from French school in Zambia. So we have them. They are here. They have the qualifications. It's a matter of just training them 6-8 months, and they are able to help with this need, instead of just waiting for, you know, training, let's say American-born for 5 years, 6 years. We have them. We can retrain them for 6 months, 8 months. We have great quality here. So.
Fabrice, I understand from your book that one of the critical factors in doing well in this project is having teachers who are native French speakers.
Yeah. It's funny to hear that this is teachers is a problem here when you live so close to the border. It reminds me of New York City when we started those programs. Teachers were the problem. Finding teachers was going to be a problem. But guess what? You find solutions. You create teachers if you can't find them. If you cannot hire them from abroad or give them a visa or recognize their credentials, you figure out a way. So this is not a reason to not embark in this initiative. And when I look at Utah is not near the border. Utah has very little Francophones moving there. And yet they created more French dual language programs there than in any other state, perhaps after Louisiana. And I really think this cannot be the excuse for not creating those programs. There are ways of tapping into resources, human resources, like people moving in, whether it's on refugee status or hiring them from abroad, creating memorandum of understanding between the state of Burlington and, let's say, Quebec province or another place in France. That happens. That is a creative way of solving that problem. Again, the examples that we hear with the Congolese community, I've heard the same thing happening in the state of Maine, where many refugees coming from French-speaking Africa have done more than just revitalizing French in the state of Maine. They have now embarked in creating programs in schools with the help of seniors, Mainers, who used to speak French, and together trying to really revigorate, revitalize, re-energize the French heritage of the state. And I think that's the best asset that you have. You have it here already. You have the resource here to make this happen with people willing to do it. You just need to train them, give them the credentials, and recognize their expertise, and that's it.
Yeah, Cleophace.
I mean, Steve, when we hear this credo talking about we are training, global leaders, I wonder what kind of global leaders are you, training if they just speak one language? Yeah. So what kind of a global leaders are you training if they can't even speak to their neighbors just for 2 hours from Burlington? We are talking about Montreal and Quebec here. So I think French should be natural here in Vermont. It shouldn't be like a debate. I think it's something which not only we need, but the history even itself. When I got here in 2005, my friend told me that before Vermont was we had French speakers, and his grandma was speaking French, and his mother was also speaking French. And I said, so why did we lose that? Why can't we get back to our heritage and start equipping our our kid to become real global leaders? So I think we can do that with this program, and I think that there's nothing which should hold us back. We should go forward and make sure that we have it.
I think you're right. I think we can, and I think, the fact that the City Council 6 years ago said that we should be doing this, and unanimously, which is really rare in the City Council, that everybody agrees on something like this. So, Jane, what is your strategy there in terms of your colleagues on the City Council?
Well, I think this will probably pass unanimously again, because it's not that controversial. But I think where we really need to focus our efforts is really in the Burlington School Department, right? So I thought, just as a basic fact, I think you all have a good understanding of what dual language instruction means in an immersion program. But I think for the people who are watching, they might not get a clear sense of it. So we're talking about something different than just offering French language instruction, right? So can you kind of describe the image of it? And I'm thinking that there's probably lots of benefits to just learning generally, to learning in 2 languages. And that might be kind of a selling point for the school department. So what is dual language instruction? How is it different than just students learning French?
Sure.
And what are the kind of other benefits just to learning and cognitive development?
So you have two types of models. The one that is really growing in popularity in the US currently is a dual language model, which is also called sometimes a one-way immersion or two-way immersion. That means if it's a two-way immersion, for instance, that you have in the same classroom, in kindergarten, for instance, 24 children, 12 children will speak French as their mother tongue, and another 12 will speak English as their mother tongue, and together they will learn both languages and all subjects through those two languages, and learn from each other as well, from their peers, as well as from their teacher who will speak both languages. That's a two-way immersion problem, and that works if you have the population to make it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, in Utah, for instance, will use a one-way immersion program whereby all the children in the classroom only speak English, and perhaps others will speak other languages. But they will learn those two languages 50% of the time, and all the subjects will be taught in French and English throughout the day. And then in the end, by the time they reach 5th grade, they'll be fluent in both languages. They'll be bilingual, they'll be biliterate, and then they'll have a better understanding of the world as well. This is not just about learning language,
Right.
it's definitely about being culturally savvy, understanding the nuances and seeing the world with different eyes. Understanding your neighbor as well, understanding different perspectives about things, and that is definitely triggering other things in the children's brains. This is something that many researchers are now looking at, the impact of bilingualism on the brain, for instance. And not only you're good in language, but you're also good in math. You're good in music. You're a better you have more empathy towards others. It's just incredible the number of things that this back and forth into languages from a young age can trigger in the brain. And this is it's just no-brainer. It should be something we invest massively in for our children's benefit.
I did want to say that we did invite our school superintendent, Obang, who's out of town over the holidays, but his assistant did respond to the invitation and said that he does plan. Obang is a French speaker. He's from Africa, and he has had his whole education career before now in Canada in bilingual school systems in New Brunswick and Ontario. So he knows what we're talking about. And his assistant said that he did want to convey that he intends to move ahead and have a public discussion of this, open a public discussion of this project after he's got the next year's budget nailed down.
Yeah.
So
that sounds good. I mean, I'm just wondering if it might be good. We have these two magnet schools in Burlington in the Old North End. And you do a pilot, because those are very attractive schools. And so the parents who wanted their children to be involved in this kind of program, you could say, apply to the Sustainability Academy or the Integrated Arts Academy and kind of do it on that scale, show that it works, and then kind of maybe build it out from there.
I've heard that there is interest in some of the other schools too, and
Is that right?
their
Okay.
own magnet program. We have
Yeah.
a situation of magnet envy
Yeah.
here sometimes,
Yes,
but
right.
that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's
that's
a good thing. It wouldn't hurt at all.
You were saying something very important about earlier on. We discussed, is there any scholarships, for instance, that could help teachers get their certification or get their master's program or get their qualification, particularly in your situation. But there's something you need to know, because the Embassy of France launched a new fund, which is called the French Dual Language Fund, which was inaugurated by President Macron last September in New York City. And in that fund, there are 3 programs. The first one, which was opened recently, is every school with a French immersion or French dual language program can apply for a grant to buy resources, textbooks, and so forth. The second part is about teaching assistants. So a school with such a program could could pay for a teaching assistant, let's say a French speaker from Canada or Africa or anywhere, who would help the main teacher. And then the third part is scholarships for students and future teachers to get their credentials, their masters or their certificates. And this is something that I piloted in New York City for the last few years, and with the help of Hunter College in New York City, we gave $5,000 scholarships to students or young teachers so that they could then become bilingual teachers and get their masters in bilingual education. So these programs are now open to the entire nation. So again, there are solutions out there. If you're going in that direction, just bear in mind that you have supporters that will come and join you.
I just wanted to add to what you just said. I know that we are talking about Burlington here, but I think that also the ideal place will be Winooski School District, where it is under one roof. You see, everything is under that roof, and they make it easier to pilot a project like that. So I will also, I mean, I don't know how we can collaborate with the school, with Winooski School District, to make it, you know.
Yes, I just didn't mention Winooski because I have no pool in Winooski.
Okay.
I barely have any pool in Burlington.
Sure.
No, but I think that'd be great, to, for both school departments to do it together.
Absolutely, and there have been some collaborative efforts over the past couple of years between Burlington and Winooski.
And the university has a very good French department. There's local schools and colleges. I'm sure St. Mike's does as well.
Sure.
On the other side of the lake as well, I know my friends here in the room.
Okay.
Bruce is working with the Willsboro School District and other school districts upstate New York. Will think with the same logic. There has to be a way of creating those programs because it's good for business, it's good for the children. We have to tap into this business, this flows coming from the north. And I'm sure your neighbors will appreciate that and make a point of visiting the shops that have bilingual signs, and that's something. It's a win-win situation, really.
And I have heard from educators and others in Quebec of their interest in having exchange programs with students here, junior high. Kids come down here for a week. Our kids go up there for a week to experience immersion in the culture. So I mean, that's they haven't offered scholarships, but I know that they have education students there who are native French speakers who would be interested in doing a 3-year internship here if we can work out the bureaucratic necessaries to enable them to do that. So there's plenty on the table that we can mobilize here.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed in the book is that you pretty clearly state that it needs to begin with the parents. We need to organize a demand from the bottom up.
Yeah,
Can you speak a little bit about that?
This is something that that started with the parents 10 years ago, and again, there may be other ways of doing this, and Utah is pretty much top down with a senator pushing this into the system. But in many cities, it's a bottom-up approach where parents, on a playground or in a cafe or have organized, and usually it's mothers. Actually, there's something to say about the power of mothers, although dads are involved. But it takes a few months to get this going, and the book gives the recipe basically. This recipe was put together by parents for parents. And it has worked in New York, it has worked in Los Angeles, it has worked in Houston, Texas. It can work anywhere. Now I'm trying to get it to work in France, because I think parents want their kids to grow up with 2 languages or more, not just one. But even in Switzerland, you think, Switzerland already have 3 or 4 languages, but they like the book because it's also about giving immigrants a way to preserve and sustain their linguistic and cultural heritage. And that's another important fact. We should not waste that knowledge that our immigrant communities are bringing to our countries. This is what the book sums up. It uses the examples of the French community, but also the Italians of New York, the Russians, the Japanese, the Arabic community. It's a universal need, really. Families today do not want to lose their roots, their heritage. They want to stay connected. They want the children.
These are assets we need
These
to
are assets.
preserve and exploit.
And think of even the bond between generations, children talking to their grandparents back home. I raised my kids in 2 languages. I'm so happy to see my daughter speak to my parents on Skype every week in French, and that is everything to me. So I think it's something families everywhere want to preserve that bond.
Yes, what Fabrice just said, it's correct. I mean, we are talking about parent here as a parent too. But I remember in our community, we have Burundian community. They just decided to start their own classes, because they say they cannot wait. They started, they have their program at Burlington High School. So they have the different levels, the first and the second, third. Of course, if it was in
French?
You're French, yes.
Teaching French.
Yeah, they have it. So they were expecting to have it from through Alliance Française, but the way I don't think that Alliance Française was helpful, and this is what was. Is something which we have to talk about, because Alliance Française is not focusing on the young ones. And you are going to lose a language if you don't have the young people who are going to speak the language in next 10 years or in next 20 years. So Burundian community took it upon themselves, and they started their own program. So, but if we can bring the program in schools, that would be really a good thing.
Jane, did you want to sum up?
Sum up the program? Yeah. Yeah.
Any final comments?
No, just that, I just think that it's an incredible opportunity we have, a way to really make us distinctive, and also to be very responsive to the people who are living in our community, and who have a lot to share with us. And we're limiting our multicultural experience and exchange by the linguistic underdevelopment of the Americans who are in Burlington. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, I agree that, if any place in the United States were to become known as a center of French education, French language education, and multicultural francophonie, where else would it be? Maybe New Orleans, but they're a long way from any other center of French-speaking population. And here we are within 2 hours. There are more native French speakers within 2 hours of us sitting right here in Burlington. There are more native French speakers than English speakers, and we can do a lot to work with that and to recognize it.
I just want to thank you, Steve, for all the leadership that you've shown, and you're just very persistent. And I always know I've got a strong partner there from when we really start digging in. And I hope that once we get through the budget cycle, and that we'll have some breathing room. I think 2018 is the year we really want to jumpstart this conversation.
I want to say, for people who are watching, either now or later on when it's rebroadcast, Facebook.com/Bilingual Burlington. You can like that page. We'll have a method of reaching parents and others in the community through that connection. And Fabrice has his own webpage, fabricejaumont.net, correct?
Right, yes.
So feel free to get in touch. And thank you for bearing with us today, and join the bilingual revolution, folks. We need to make it happen. It's a great opportunity. And thank you all for coming and for being here.
Bravo, merci.
Thank you, sir.
Au revoir tout le monde. Merci beaucoup.